Property Unfiltered. Real investors, real stories, the good and the bad in property investing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Property Unfiltered. Real investment stories, unfiltered, raw, uncut. Basically, a no BS show about buying and holding property for property investors. It is Grace Ormsby here. Pleasure to be back in the studio with house finders Simon Loo. Simon.
Great to be back.
We had such a great time the first time that we had to come back and do it all again.
100%. No, it was really, really good. And today I've got another guest on the show, Stephen. Stephen's a client of ours, but we've had quite a journey. I think over the past 2-3 years only. Actually, it hasn't been a very long journey, but it's been a wild ride.
It's been a pretty good ride when you look at it. So
yeah. So I met Stephen when he started off. He already had a few properties under his belt, and he was looking to really kind of accelerate the progression of his property journey to get himself to a point where he had passive income to quit his day job and all the rest of it, and excited to say that he's at that point at the moment. So I thought, what better way than to have him on the show and share his trials and tribulations and ups and downs and stories and motivations and everything. So yeah, thank you for coming, Stephen. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, happy to be here, and it's happy to go through. So it's been a fairly longish journey. Started 2007, started buying a few properties, but it's really been accelerating, sort of obviously getting to know yourself a little bit better, and now in a pretty good position. So yeah, very 100%. Excited.
I'm super excited to pick both of your brains, really. It's like a masterclass in here. But before I do, I mean, you've only really been working together for, as you said, a couple of years. Mm-hmm. How much time would you have spent together in that time?
To be honest with you, this is the first time I'm seeing you in person.
You're joking.
No, I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't come out of my house very often. So
Lucky you love houses and love properties and can clearly spend a lot of time where you love.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Countless hours of phone conversations. Yep. I reckon we catch up. When we're working together on a deal, we talk, quite often. Yep. But even without anything going on, Stephen would often just give me a buzz and just see how things are going and what's next strategy-wise. And, I'm always happy to kind of just go, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't be doing. And there's been a few things that we've had where you were kind of going down this path, and I was kind of like, all right, maybe we should steer a different direction to get
bring me back.
Yeah, to get you to back on the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's. I feel like I know him.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, well. I'm blown away that you'd never met in person before. That, judging by the way you interact and talk to each other, that was not on my radar at all.
Oh, right. There we go.
A lot of phone conversations, and a lot of Simon just pulling me back. Don't do this crazy idea or whatever. So yeah, there's quite a bit of history. It does feel like a lot longer than 2 years, and
we had COVID as well, so
Yeah, exactly, which would have blocked us.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Well, let's go back to the beginning of that property investing journey for you then, back in 2007.
Yeah.
Because that's probably where the story does start, and then we probably fast forward a little bit to when it all accelerated a couple of years ago. But what was the initial draw card into property?
Well, it's a good question. So when I was in the UK, one of my old school friends was investing a little bit in property. And so I came out to, obviously, Australia. Actually didn't have a visa or anything. And I actually bought my first property in Kogarah, and I didn't know anything about anything. And as probably hear quite a lot on this podcast. And sort of, so I didn't have a visa. I was just I just got my job, and I was pounding the pavements, really looking around Five Dock and all these areas for an apartment, and looked about 40 or 50, and then found this place in Kogarah where we moved into for about 3 years. I needed something the FIRB approval, the Foreign Investment Review Board. So we had to go through sort of like some of those hoops. And I remember sort of like saying to some of my friends who lived in Balmain and these other areas in Sydney, like, what are you doing? Why are you going to Kogarah? And it was like, well, it was cheaper than the likes of 5 Dock, and those 5 Dock properties were about 90 square meters the apartment, whereas we were getting 145, and it was close to the station. So he got that one, secured it, and then sort of after a couple of years, it went. I think we got it for 442. A couple of years later, it's worth 550, 600, and it was like that's when the light bulb went off. And then we purchased after about 3 years, and the career was going okay. We purchased actually, I think it was your old neck of the woods in Balcombe Hills for our principal place of residence.
Yes, I grew up in the Hills area. Yeah,
you're in the Hills area.
Yeah.
And this is one of the big moments probably in my investing journey, actually, because my old broker before Michael is a guy called Richard Taylor. I was just about to sell that Kogarah property because I just thought, okay, I'm a millionaire and I've made 100,000 millionaire. That's what I thought in my head. And so
it felt $1 million.
Yeah.
Felt it, and I just.
Inflation before the last 15 years.
100 grand went a long way back in the day.
It did, yeah. I mean, it's amazing how much it's changed, and so we found this place in Balcombe Hills to be our principal place of residence. It was 685,000 on an 800 square meter block, and we were going to sell it, and the brokers don't do that. Just rent the property out. And that's really the start of it. So sort of it was like, okay, all right, this is how finance is structured. We made mistakes actually, sorting the loan out for Kogarah. I went straight to St George and they put me on a fixed rate and I couldn't do anything. And, so that was the learning period. And around that sort of time, that's when I found the Property Forum Summersoft, because obviously we didn't have, you didn't have the podcast and this back then. You had the printed magazines or API and, I suppose your magazine, Smart Property Investor. So that's where I used to get all my sort of info from, and that was the start of the journey, really. And I was pretty, and then Balcombe Hills went berserk, and then I was like, I really like this, and it really, really kicked off in around 2010, 11, the property investing journey. That's when the mistakes started.
We'll get to the mistakes at some point, but even interesting for you to come out here and decide that buying was your first port of call.
Yeah.
Because how many people move to a new country and buy straight away?
Yeah.
It's a good point, because actually I've listened to a few podcasts, and I think that the go is, or what people say, they generally come out here and rent, find where they want to live and stuff. And I'm like, no, I just wanted to buy. I didn't want to give any money to the greedy investors. So I wanted to get in and just
without knowledge of the area as well. You kind of just came here, and most people at least get a feel for where they want to where they want to live.
In Bondi?
Yeah, totally. I was going to say that.
Not wanting to stereotype, but
or Coogee or something.
You've missed a milestone in the life of many Poms.
I did actually. Yeah. Although actually, funny enough, a lot of the people I came out with were living in Bondi, and I thought, no, I want to buck that trend. I don't want to do the usual. So it was actually someone at work tipped me off onto Kogarah, and it was on the train line, and it was the Express, and that's kind of why I did it. But I do remember sort of like going to, quite vividly, and my wife still talks about it every now and again. We go to a dinner party, and I'm like, you born in Kogarah? Are you crazy?
Yeah. Kogarah's great, by the way, listeners. It's a really lovely suburb.
Yeah. I know. It's good.
You lived there for 3 years.
Yeah.
How could it not be lovely?
No, it's good. It was great. I had very fond memories of Kogarah and my old real estate agent there. There was a few funny ones, but won't go into that.
So then the light bulb went off, and there's something in this property investment thing.
Yeah.
What did you then do next?
The next thing. So we had the Balcombe Hills property, and that had grown a little bit. And then at that sort of time, and I think you might have heard this so this is early 2010s, we wanted to go and buy in West Sydney, because we just couldn't believe it. And the values of the properties were 230,000 or so.
I laugh just because I've seen what they are now.
Yeah, I know. And but still sort of like, a little bit, I suppose, a little bit nervous, and we decided to use a buyer's agents, and there's going to be a bit of a revolving thing in this because my career just took off. I don't have a lot of time, and I think buyers advocates back then, it still is a growing industry, but back then it really was. And I remember talking at work saying, okay, I'm going to use a buyer's advocate to do this, and And people say, oh, it's a waste of money or whatever. But in the end, it turned out pretty good. And we bought a property in St Mary's for $240,000. I think it's 2011. And we're off and running. And one of the big regrets I have was we could have probably got another 2 at that time. And this is where, where I was working in the investment banking world. And people actually saw me with realestate.com up looking at some of these properties in Lethbridge Park and Tregear and these other places and basically took me out of it. And so I basically just thought, well, these guys are a lot smarter than me, option traders, etc. And that was a big mistake, really. So I ended up parking a little bit after that.
I think in hindsight with these areas as well, like it's always easy to say, oh, I wish I bought more. But I think back in the day, the mentality when you do the research and you run the numbers and when you're there on the ground physically looking at the properties, I mean, a lot of Western Sydney back around them was considered low socio, around the sort of Tregear area and so on in particular.
Yeah.
And I was the same thing. I remember looking at 1,500 square metre blocks, a few streets away from the station in Mount Druitt. They were all about 450K back in the day. And I kind of, the emotions got the better of me. I was quite young and starting out and didn't do it. And now they're all, if you look on real estate, they're all worth 2.5 mil because everyone put townhouses on them and everything. So, being unemotional, even though we advocate and keep telling people, if you're buying a house, it's all about emotions, you're buying property, it's about numbers and stuff like that. But I think when you're in the thick of it and when it's in your own money as well, that you've saved, so hard to save up these deposits.
Yeah.
It's hard to pull the trigger on something so uncomfortable, I suppose, outside your comfort zone, that type of thing.
And it's so hard to see the potential. And really, it was always going to be a development area, but the speed at which it's happened has
it's remarkable.
Taken a lot of people by surprise. So
absolutely. Gentrification,
don't
urban
feel
sprawl.
too bad. Yeah.
No. I mean, it's turned out, what's also valuation here on the sheet? Sort of, it's pretty incredible. 786 now.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And we've still got that one.
But I think that was coming from there as well. I think it perhaps created a bit of a mindset for you to, focus on maybe like the new Western Sydneys, which is what we ended up going for.
100%.
And I remember having lots of conversations with you even back then. You needed a bit of convincing to jump into a lot of these suburbs because you were thinking, they're again a little bit back in the day, a little bit low socio, not cool, that type of thing.
No, you're dead right, and it's amazing what how damaging a conversation can be. And so I went on a different path after that, and that's when obviously coming and working with you a few years ago, that really put us back and sort of clarified what we should be doing, and then it's just been straight up basically since. So it's funny how you have these moments and you think, I wish I could have backed up the truck back then and purchased all, but it's worked out okay.
But even then, one of those ones you could have bought could have gone completely bust. It could have caught on fire. It could have, like anything could have happened. So there's no point dwelling on the could have beens. It's more just, forward, and keep working on what you can work with now and create that strategy and stick to it.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the things I think about property. It's this it's very simple, but it's very hard. And the simple thing is, I think you've told me, Simon. It's just if you're doing something that's working, just keep doing it. But almost it's like human nature to try and overcomplicate things and do different things, and I'm very guilty of that. So if you just keep doing the same thing, and the successful investor, I've got a very good team. And probably, with Simon, Michael, and Mansour, who I know they've all done the same thing. Just the same properties, bread and butter, and it's as easy as that. And that's where I veer off course because I did look at these sort of development style properties, and I mean it wasn't. Luckily, it wasn't disastrous, but it's just that opportunity cost. But it was part of that learning.
Yeah, I hate to use the word formula, but there is a constant in these properties that you buy that ends up doing quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, you kind of just realise. I mean, the numbers reflect themselves. Yeah, but
you do.
But you got to kind of stay the course, I suppose.
Yeah, you do, and we'll get into I suppose the deals that we've done with you pretty soon. But it really is straightforward, and And when we got together, there was a few conversations we had where you really opened my eyes about a few things and where I'd gone wrong. And they don't have to be renovators or whatever. You know, buying the off markets and no matter how you're picking them up, distressed or whatever. And when you can actually, I think one of the important thing I learned from yourself is you've got to make money going into the deal.
Yeah,
and all of these
100%,
properties, you're making money going into the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into some of these deals,
Yeah.
I'm a bit curious, if you don't mind me going a little bit left of field.
No.
So investment banking,
Yeah.
why property?
Yeah, it's a good question. Especially so when I was so I worked for some of the big investment banks. I was at State Street and Goldman Sachs, and it was really sort of like when I was at Goldman, that's when the property started off. So one of the things I did start looking at, you know, someone will roll his eyes a little bit, but I did look at sort of stock strategies. But when you're at Goldman, you can't invest in stock, you know, because I can view all the orders. So there's a lot of sort of compliance and governance, and plus I'm not very good at it. So I think at that I'd had enough. What was 3 or 4 years of sort of like investing, seeing what happened at Kogarah, Balcombe Hills, and then St Mary's, and just realizing, okay, well, I mean, it's you're leveraging an asset and getting growth there, and it's pretty safe with stock. Back then, you can't leverage safely, but with property you could. And so while I was at the bank, and I used to obviously work very long hours, and it was a lot of fun, but I did spend a lot of time sort of like on the property stuff, trying to learn and develop. But yeah, I suppose zigged. Everyone was zagging there, sort of like into stocks and algorithmic trading and all that sort of stuff. But it just made it easier because I couldn't actually do it.
Yeah, good on you. And to see the tangible benefits of what you were doing as well, like, wow, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, yeah. I always remember when I moved down from Sydney to Melbourne, and a few of the guys started to know my story a little bit, and it was one of the futures guys. And he's this old sort of, sorry, not that old. Futures sales guys turned around and he heard my story and he goes, "Man, you were brave, like going long on the Aussie property market when rates were going up in this environment. Take my hat off to you, but you're a brave man." And these little things stick with you because, and it's something that Simon, you talk about a lot. It's, okay, it is investing, but it's also business, really. And so sometimes I think of it, it's growing the business, growing the portfolio, rather than, okay, investing without an idea. It's pretty controlled. So that stuck with me a little bit because I didn't think I was gambling at all. I thought it was just pretty, you know, as safe as houses.
Yeah, cool. So obviously you bought in Balcombe Hills, you bought in St Mary's, you had Kogarah.
Yeah.
Where did you go for the next little while?
So this is kind of like this is when it gets a little bit, you know, interesting. Before I met Simon, so the next one, I don't know, I just had an idea, like, let's go down to Melbourne and buy a property there. And so this is where I was getting a bit of encouragement, maybe not great advice. The first, you know, kind of like, you know, sort of, you know, partnership, I suppose, with the buyer's agent in Sydney, sort of like there's a few things I didn't really agree with, and so we thought, no, we'll go our own route, and my broker was sort of saying you should look at small subdivisions, etc., and sort of developments. And so we went south and we brought in a place called Pascoe Vale South, and it was a property on about 500 square meters. You could subdivide the front house and then build something at the back, and it looked like on paper a really good deal. We went and had a look, but we couldn't actually look inside, and that was using a buyer's agent. And this is actually where wasn't such a good story. But because we couldn't look inside, we thought we could rent it out just for a minimum amount. But as it turns out, you couldn't, and it was basically a wreck. And so we had these holding costs, and we're trying to get the approvals, and we got all of that done. And then all of a sudden, the screw turned at GS, and I was working harder than ever. And I was like, oh God, I've got myself into a bit of a mess here. And so after a couple of years, we got the permits done, and we just sold them on, and we lost a little bit of money. But yeah, I think that was a 2-year process, and that was probably the first setback that we'd had in property.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
I mean, it clearly didn't put you off too much,
No, it didn't.
but it's a learning experience, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I think the learning curve kind of helped put you on a better path, maybe.
It did, and actually, I was actually a little bit down at that sort of time, thinking, okay, I've messed this up. My wife's like, what are you doing? As she often does. Sorry if she'll listen to this. I think she'll laugh. And then the next journey was, and sort of again reading Somersoft. It was actually reading Michael Shah's story, and I kind of like talking about circle, coming back full circle. And he posted his, I don't know why, but he posted his story on Somersoft. They used to do the interviews on the forum back then, and I just read it, and it was just such common sense. And talking to Michael, talks to Simon, everything's common sense. And I just thought, yeah, that makes 100%. I'm going to do that. So I obviously he was investing in Logan there, so that comes back to the West Sydney thing. You find these areas like West Sydney there, and I had a recommendation for a buyer's agent to help her there. I don't think you were doing the do then, Simon. I think you were kind of like building your portfolio. This would have been 2014, 15.
2014, 15. No, I was actually well into it by then.
Okay, well, there you go. He was well into
But back then I wasn't really kind of, because strangely as I was running House Finder back then, it was all just word of mouth and repeat business and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't really spending any time promoting that I was, a buyer's agent or in the space or whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't, just purely because I didn't really had the need to.
Yeah.
But somehow we crossed paths anyway. So
No, we did, and we've spoken about these two purchases a little bit, and so we did engage another buyer's agent, and being in Sydney at that time, and he went through a few and turned a few down out in Ipswich area, and then he was able to find like two properties side by side in Loganley, and I mean, it was a pretty exciting site. There was in the medium density sort of zone, quite close to the station. Bought for $410 each. I think it was door knock. So we were quite happy with the purchase and quite excited.
Door knock.
Yeah, door knock. Yeah. Just the agents were door knocking.
Oh, door knocking. Okay,
door knocking.
Cool.
They managed to get to purchase these two, and we were over the moon to get them side by side. And this was around, I think it was 2014. I think 2015. There
2015,
you go.
yeah.
Time goes quick. But I think we overpaid for these properties. I mean, time's a good healer with properties, we all know. But we did overpay, and we had to stump up quite a bit of equity to get those deals across the line because the valuations came in around the 300,000 mark, and we paid $410, I think it was, each. And so we just sat on them. And this is where property investing gets a little bit tough, because this was at the time where I think we just shot the gun a little bit. It's a good time to bought the properties, but I think the properties you were buying, Simon, they were really good yielders and bread and butter.
Well, back then, I went to a lot of auctions.
Yeah.
Mortgagee auctions in Queensland and in Logan in particular didn't have the kind of regulations they had today. So essentially, the banks could sell their houses for pretty much whatever they wanted. So I was, for whatever reason, there was like a magic number of 230,000. Every single mortgagee I went to, whether it was Loganley or Crestmead or any other suburb, it would always get to that 230K mark and hammer down, and I bought it. And a lot of these houses, because this is one of those things where I kind of, perhaps unnecessarily put myself in a sort of risky position. But I just thought these houses were so cheap, they were so far below market. Like even if there were issues with the property, it would be completely absorbed. And I was just thinking, worst case scenario is that I can sell it the very next day. And, even if I don't make much money out of it, at least I'm not going to lose any after buying and selling costs.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, that kind of really drew me to Logan. And then I thought to myself, you know what, next door to these areas like Loganley and Waterford and so on, you've got Daisy Hill, you've got Roachdales, you've got all these, at the time, basically suburbs that were right next to each other, but the prices were so much higher for the exact same product, 3-4 bedroom houses. okay, sooner or later it's going to catch up. If we looked at what happened in Sydney, which Sydney was going gangbusters at the time, I was thinking, okay, sooner or later this is going to happen in Logan. And I think around 2016, that's when it really started.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
started going up and up and up. The other thing about Logan that's interesting is back when we were buying, everyone on the forums was, negative, very negative about it. It would never grow. It was full of, unemployment and drugs and violence and all this kind of stuff. And I heard it all before because that's what they said about Western Sydney back in the 2008, whatever, 9 before the boom started. But I kind of just, okay, numbers stack up, whatever, just kept going at it. So blocking out that negativity was I think quite key to it all. Yeah.
Still can be exhausting.
Yeah.
Oh.
To go against that, to actively
It's
be
hard.
like,
Yeah, it definitely is.
I accept what you're saying. I'm not going to listen to it anyway. Like, that's not an easy thing.
It's definitely not
to
easy. And, especially when it's coming from people that are closest to you. So normally this feedback comes from, your friends, your family, your parents, or, your wife perhaps.
Yeah.
And property's funny because you don't really realize you make money unless you sell it one day or unless you get a massive chunk of equity. And I think up until that point, all you're dealing with is actually headaches and maintenance and tenancy issues and the media. One day it's doom and gloom. The next day everything's going up. I've seen articles from the exact same journalist where literally one day apart, they'll write a story about the property market tanking, and the next day it's like all rosy again. So it's like getting your head around all of that, and that's why I always keep saying, having a really solid, not only team around you to kind of put you in, the mindset, of being consistent, but also having real sort of personal goals and drivers to just keep going, and that driver doesn't necessarily need to be a massive, I want to retire early and have, lots of money and this and that. But it could be something as simple as I think for you as an example, once you see the result, so you buy a property, you see the result, you're like, oh, wow, we bought this property for, X amount, and, in a space of 12 months, you're pulling out 100 or 150 grand equity. I think that
process,
that's kind of just really exciting. And you kind of just think, okay, how do I kind of replicate this over and over again so that I can get myself to a point where you're kind of at now today. So, yeah.
Well, where did the change happen for you from I can just make some money from property to hang on, let me put in place a real strategy here and then see what happens?
Well, yeah. I mean, it'd be remiss of me to say. So when I did kick off around the time when we did buy West Sydney, we had actually sat down and had to think about where we want to get to. This was actually with Manzuro, and so we wanted to get 100,000 passive income. We wanted to pay off principal place of residence. I can remember the meeting very clearly. But we blew that out of the water pretty quickly, which is the incredible thing. So it's what comes next, and that's where I started overcomplicating things a little bit. We had this strategy a little bit whereby we sold down our principal place of residence and moved cities because we're nomads, being expat really. So we moved. Balcombe Hills basically doubled in value overnight. It seemed in the mid 2000s, and I sort of wanted a little bit of a change. I wanted to live near the beach, and I love my golf. So we moved down to Melbourne, and Goldman let me move down to Melbourne as well. And we bought somewhere half the price. And so we'd realised all of this gain really just by selling our principal place of residence and then starting again. And so we had minimal debt now on the home, and we had sort of money to spend on another one. This is when sort of life gets in the way a little bit, in a good way this time, because I had my only son actually, I should say. And so all of a sudden we had the two properties in Loganley, we had the property in St Mary's, and then the principal place of residence, and quite a bit of money in the bank. I wanted to put that to work. I didn't want to put into stock for reasons we discussed a little bit earlier. And so I was thinking, and went to brokers, and we couldn't actually borrow that much, and I was quite shocked about it. And it was mainly because just my wife wasn't working then, and we'd had the son. So I thought, Loganley was kind of, I mean, they were great buys. But again, over market, they're costing us a bit of money to hold, and that's what we'll get onto in a second. And so I thought, okay, what should I do? And we decided to buy. I thought, okay, we're going to go for capital growth, and this is maybe where the mistake comes in. And we decided to buy a property in Reservoir north of Melbourne with that money, and we put a lot of money into this, so about 400,000 or something like that. And just it was a similar sort of deal to Loganley, a bit of a land bank, and sort of like zoning had changed, and then we'd do the plans and sell that on, and so we did that. And, I thought it was a great deal. We were also looking at house and land, and anyway, but should have got that one anyway. We didn't do it. We got this, and I mean, it was out of pocket quite significantly, and we went across after a year or two. Yeah, my wife wasn't very happy in Melbourne. Reservoir wasn't where the property was. It was doing okay, but not great. And then we made the move up to Brisbane, where we are now, and sort of like and set up again there. And we sold our place in Mount Eliza, which is where we were then, and we bought this place up in Tarragindi debt free. So that was pretty cool, with this capital growth strategy. But then we looked at the state of our portfolio, and then we had like one in St Mary's, we had two in Loganley, we had this Reservoir property, and this is when I came across like. Because I'd seen Simon's story, and I'd seen obviously Michael's story on Summersoft, and what I thought was inspiring, I was kind of, because my Logan sort of experience was maybe a little bit different to yourselves, and when you talked about buying at 230, and then all of a sudden I saw how well these guys had done, and I looked at what we'd done with Reservoir, and these guys had just killed it, and I take my hat off to them. It was amazing, and so I clearly remember it on holiday in Noosa. And I just picked up the phone to Michael, and I said, like, I need to move away from this land banking developing strategy. I'm useless at it. I'm too busy to even look, to do this because of my current job. And then we went on to this sort of like, painstaking period of 6 months, like reforming all the loans. And it was that was the time I sort of like called Simon, and I said, look, I'd seen his story. He sort of, seen a lot of the deals he'd posted, and thought, okay, this is where we need to go. This is where we need to pivot to. And I clearly remember the chat we talked about in the deals, and it was along the lines of like, you don't have to get a renovator like the Loganley properties. You can actually buy deals, and with the full product done, buy under market value with a good yield. And then make money going in. And I think that was the key thing, make money going into the deal. And that's when I think the portfolio would have been around, I think our LVR was about 30% then, and our portfolio would have been about 3 million, I think, around then. And that's when it just, this was in 2021, and then we had a fun 2 or 3 years with Simon.
Yeah.
Did it sound like a cry for help when he reached out to you?
No, I mean, listen to him now. This guy's, just
so put together.
Yeah, totally. No, I don't think it was a cry for help. I mean, if you just listen to where he was up until that point, he's already a successful investor in his own right.
So many people would look at that and go, "You've
Absolutely.
made it."
A few
If you've bought
mistakes, but
PPOR,
I think,
debt free.
Oh yeah,
That's
totally.
most people's end goal.
Yeah. So it was kind of already there in many ways, but when we had that initial call and chat about what you want to achieve, it was, to get passive income and to quit your job and to have that coming in, and that's where we sort of went down this path of buying slightly different properties, to kind of leverage off each other. And it wasn't a very long journey to be honest. I mean, I'm looking at the portfolio and the numbers now. We bought the first one in December 21, and here we are in December 23.
Time goes quick.
I had to think about
24 months.
It feels longer than 2 years, but there you go. It's amazing what we've achieved.
And Michael, he's the mortgage broker, by the way. Instrumental in obviously pulling out equity really quickly on these houses, so that it just enabled you to keep going and keep buying. And as we were buying, these houses were going up in value as well. Yeah. So really the goal is now you're kind of at a point where you have a few options. You can sell some, you can pay off some, you can keep going, you can.
Yes, it's so many. I think the it's talked about the penny dropping. If we take the first deal 2 years ago, lemongrass, well, maybe in Griffin, the property we had in Griffin, we picked that up for 630, and the comparables was 700, 720, and it was quite remarkable. And then going up with Michael, about I think 7-8 months later, able to pull out 100,000. I
forgot the situation on that one, but generally whenever we see these properties, there is some kind of reason why they're selling quite cheap, or what everyone calls below market value. It's usually something on the seller side. So, it could be maybe they're going through it's like a deceased estate or a bankruptcy or something like that. But I've been doing this for 9 years now, and sometimes I'm still surprised as to how properties manage to sell cheap.
Yeah.
Especially in crazy markets like Perth at the moment, or Brisbane back in around the sort of 2018-ish, 19-ish mark. So yeah, they're definitely out there. Put it that way.
They are out there, and I mean, it's the full site. West Sydney going back to then, you're able to get those sort of deals. Picking up for 200, revalued at 270 with a minor renovation, and you come forward. There's the same things happening in Brisbane, and same things happening in Perth now. And one of the properties that we bought there, I mean, that's a remarkable one. About a year ago, and the growth, I think it was like 3 months after we bought it, it was revalued at 100,000 more. It's just remarkable. Like, I remember texting Simon, so I just got a valuation of this.
I love those texts.
And you're like, you would.
It was. The response was seriously.
Straight to Instagram.
Yeah. It's good when even the guy that found the property is like, oh, really?
Yeah.
It's just so fulfilling. Like, I know, it's a business and everything, but like when you see the results like that, it's like, okay, cool. It actually works. Like,
well, as you said, it's the formula.
Yeah.
You know what you're looking for when you go for it.
Yeah.
And then it pays off. It's just by how much, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is the formula. And I think Simon's patented that a little bit. I mean, it's, that was maybe the best one I think we've had.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And then we kept going. We bought one in Goodna, and
that's for the self-managed super fund. So
that's with SMSF. They needed a good cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. You found something really good for us there.
Yeah. I think at that point, if I remember correctly, you probably needed a bit of a cash flow boost just overall anyway with your portfolio.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when you buy lots of properties, you get to a certain point where your cash flow takes a hit, especially if you're pulling out equity from every property. It's kind of getting like an extra loan.
Yeah.
So every, I don't know, usually around the 5, 6, 7 property mark, depending on what your personal circumstances are, that's when you do need to either focus on a high cash flow property so that it can allow you to buy the next few, or what I sometimes tell people to do is maybe sell down some of the initial ones you bought to free up debts and maybe to take out a bit of profit as well and park it in an offset account or maybe pay off another house.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a juggling act at some point, but the goal really is to borrow more money to buy more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finance game.
Yeah. And then we ended up in sunny Perth.
Sunny Perth, yeah. So this was the time. So we bought the Goodna property, and I think it's fair to say you weren't really you were kind of still specialising in Brisbane, and Michael's on the phone to me buying Perth.
Yeah.
And so we went out that way. Again, I didn't know anything about Perth. My wife lived there for a little bit. That was about all I knew. And so we engaged a different buyer's agent this time because Simon wasn't over there, and he bought 2 properties for us over there. Mm-hmm. They both performed quite well, and sort of that. So that was one was in Naranda, so that was on the train line, quite close to CBD, and the other one was Quinns Rock, which I think the area quite well. That's sort of 30 k's north, but near the beach.
Yep.
Had a hot tub. I even wanted to move in. Even my wife was like, let's just pack up. I don't think we can do 4 cities, though.
That's the Perth allure. Every time I'm always like looking at these houses going, why am I here? 500 grand, 600 grand, even today.
Yeah.
You can buy like a
It's
4-bedroom
nuts.
house right
Incredible.
next to the beach. And when I say next to the beach, you're like one street away from the beach.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle's so beautiful there as well. You've got like amazing, coastlines up and down. Yeah. So I think eventually
No, it looks lovely though.
I need to convince my wife.
Yeah.
See if we can make the
Do a
move.
stint. I mean, I lived there when I was younger. Just, I guess, a bit of disclosure there. And my parents, we left Perth because my dad didn't like driving 30 minutes to the beach in traffic.
Oh, wow.
And we
okay.
lived in the suburbs. We weren't. We were okay. We're Mount Lawley area, like a
Yeah.
nice part of Perth, and it was too far.
It takes 30 minutes
mean-
for me to get to the bloody end of the road
Yeah.
at the moment.
Each to their own, but it felt like an interesting decision at the time. Still does.
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
quite make sense, but I mean, it's beautiful over there. There's so much going for it.
Did you keep that property in Mount Lawley? Or?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No, I think that's still the bane of my parents' existence as well. That they didn't hold on to that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots going for
there
it.
You go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, everyone knows it's going a bit crazy at the moment.
Oh,
But you got in at a very
incredible.
good time. I
No.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. All the suburbs, funnily enough, that we were talking about, because obviously after the two property, I think I remember you saying you bought a property in Queen's Rock and it was actually a little bit cheaper than one that we got, and we were quite keen to get one in Rockingham, and that's where you kind of advised.
I remember that. That was when we reconnected because we bought that last house in Goodna, and then I kind of, nothing much happened
There wasn't much, yeah.
for some time. And then either you called me or I called you and you go, oh, hey, what's going on? And you're like, oh, I bought this house in Queen's Rock. And I'm like, hey, we're buying Queen's Rock now. What's going on here?
But it was actually that sort of time. I remember it, and I sort of I was thinking, okay, right, work is pretty hard. I'm quite tired here. The portfolio is looking pretty good now, and this is where kind of you live and learn. And I started thinking, okay, how do I get a bit of passive income? And I started putting some money into index funds, just to try and get that passive income. And so I started doing that, and then I just thought, do I put this all in? And I thought, well, property's been so good to us. I think someone said, sort of about diversification, with property, because I'm a specialist in property. I do like to keep my eggs in one basket. It might be Munzura actually, but I watch those eggs closely. And that's what I was thinking. And so I thought, well, okay. And then, it's a chance. I think I called Simon, just to see how you're doing. And then we had this Queen's Rock sort of epiphany, if you will. And it was like, oh, okay, well.
And there we are.
And I was
A
like,
meeting of the minds.
meeting of the minds. And then we started going again. And I think we bought another two pretty quick in close order there.
Yeah.
And they've both done very well.
One after that was in Rockingham.
Yeah.
We bought that November 22.
Yeah.
So a bit over a year, about 150k equity, I think, at valuation.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, Dudley Park. And that one was bought in May 23, and there's about 100 grand in that as well, I think.
Yeah, that's
from valuation.
420,000, and valued have 540, so about 100,000 in there. Incredible.
So, what are some of the basic specs around the portfolio as it's standing now?
I'd say, well, we've got one more purchase, and this is one I actually bought on my own.
Yep.
And so, again, it was like
Just graduated.
graduated, indeed. So I had this money in the index funds, as I said, about 200 grand or something, and I was sort of thinking, okay, I'd like to get one more, and then just as it so happens, a one in Loganley came up, and it was actually three. It was a third in a row, and they're all in the medium density. So it's a bit like Monopoly, and so we moved pretty quickly. This is actually just going under. It settles in first week of Jan, and so yeah.
So just for context, you already owned two properties in Loganley side by side that you bought earlier on.
Yeah.
And then the third one came up for sale
yeah.
Next
next
door.
to it, and you went for it. And now
Went
how
for
big's
it.
the block in total?
So it's 2,400 square meters.
Yeah, you can do a lot there.
Yeah.
So the agents are licking their chops about trying to get their hands on that and sell it on. And the only thing I'd say about it was I was pretty excited. I wanted to get it. I probably should have engaged yourself, Simon, to do the negotiation, because I was just like, I just got to get this. I've just got to get it.
Yeah.
That's the
Like
emotion, isn't
Pokemon
it?
cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good move because now you've got options.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
In terms of development, I always I always get, including yourself. I remember a few conversations with, maybe I should do a subdivision,
Yeah.
in Melbourne or something like this. And I was
Yeah.
like, just stay the course,
So-
get yourself to a point where you are now, where you've got not only a ton of equity, but a ton of cash flow. And now
Yeah.
you've got these 3 properties, Logan Lee, right next to each other.
Yeah.
So one of your options moving forward is to just do a proper development, build whatever you can on it, and
Yeah.
and do it properly in the sense that you can. I guess also in many ways without the risk as well, because you've already, not only do you have the capital behind you, but perhaps the property knowledge
Yeah.
that you've accumulated over all those years, and then you can do it confidently, and who knows, it might be a stepping stone for you to just keep growing and building.
Well, yeah, hopefully. I mean, the good thing is there's a number of options. You can do the permits, but I'm quite keen just to sit on it and see what's happened. There's obviously been some sort of zoning changes in Sydney, kind of like recently. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in Brisbane, because if they, it's already zoned, I think you built up to 13 metres, I think it is. But if they change that again, then that, I mean, it's going to double.
Sky's the
even.
limit.
Yeah.
But even, and okay, it might be, but the agent was tentatively saying, like, if once this settles, you could flog it on and it's worth this amount. And, we're a bit sceptical maybe on that sort of valuation, but it's probably, there is a lot you can do with it. So we'll sit on it, and it's a good position to be in.
Did they know that you also held the 2 next to it?
That's a good question. I was trying to sort of like be pretty aloof.
Yeah.
And sort of like, but I think they worked it out. Yeah, I think they looked it up, and so I was actually thinking about putting a dummy name in there and all of this sort of stuff. And how do I get it? And I remember actually, I think I called Mark. I said, "How can I get it? Yeah, how can I sort of?" But in the end, sort of like there was a few people sniffing around that just on its own, but because it was a good deal on its own. But obviously, I was going to pay probably a little bit more than anyone else. But in the end, I just kind of I did sort of. Come up, and said, actually, I own the other 2, to try and force it through to say, look, just make sure this gets done.
Yeah.
And then I'll think about you down the track. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But it works. I managed
Goes
to
both
get
ways, doesn't it?
get it done. It does need a bit of work. So that's something we've got to do.
So where are you at now, like in terms of baseline numbers, like just overall? Because you're at that pivotal point where you're kind of, thinking about what's next in your life, and technically you don't have to work really if you wanted. If you wanted to live a happy, easy, simple life, but we're not happy, easy, simple creatures. So
No, we're not. And my wife and I talk about it a lot. And I've been worked to the bone this year. There'll probably be some people from work listening to this if you know what's happened. But the portfolio is about 9.6 to 10 million.
Nice.
I'd say the loans, I don't know actually, but I think it's about 50% LVR, so about 5 million.
Yeah,
I'd
wow,
say.
Amazing.
And so where we are now, so I'd say the properties that you've had are brought in cash flow, but some of the older properties we've got are still a little bit negative. If you can believe something like St Mary's is, because we've extracted equity out of that property, it's still only renting for 330. And the reason why it's only because I've had the same tenant in there for 8-9 years, and he's just been great, and I just don't want to raise the rent. That's so we're probably negative to about 20-30, but that's probably my own sort of buying. And so we're at sort of like professionally is that I spent a bit of time earlier this year sort of like thinking about what we could do, but there's a bucket load of options. There's a lot of equity. Talked to site, we could actually sell a few down, and we thought about that and just selling a load down and then living off. And I think we could get about 150,000 sort of cash flow. I think
Passive
we could realise
income.
about from the rents if we or put in index funds or whatever if we did that by realising 2 million. But I don't want to do that, and the reason being is that we've built a property portfolio to 10 mil, and I just seen again like I'm not the fanboy of Simon, but it's just that compounding effect. I don't want to ruin that compounding effect. because it's so much. 5 minutes is amazing.
Well, you've done this so quickly as well.
Yeah.
It's not like you are, getting on in age, and you've
Well, I am
still
a little
got no. Let's be real, but you've got plenty of time,
Yeah, I do.
and you've got that in your back pocket. You might
There's
as well
so many
use it.
options, like I've spoken to quite a few people that have gotten to a similar level where you can sort of just throw in the towel. And I mean, the initial calls I have with most people is like, what's your dream? 100K passive, 150K passive. Like for them, that's like an unattainable dream. But then you get there and you're kind of thinking, what's next? Not that you're not appreciative of it, but I think the journey for you to get there has been so like ups and downs and confidence
definitely.
that you build and the knowledge and the team of people around you. All you're thinking now is potential.
Yeah.
So if there was any piece of advice I would give you is just take a breather, maybe a couple of months off, just sit around, weigh out your options, and then pick a path and try it, give it a crack and see how you go.
Yeah. I think so, and I think there's a minute. I mean, the good thing is that we've got quite a big cash buffer. There's a lot of so we can probably have a couple of years off if we really wanted to. But I'm someone who does like to do stuff and
I was going to
keep
say
busy.
that you've clearly been career driven.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have to work anymore, it's like, well, that wasn't really probably the goal.
It was for a little bit, and then because I initially had this idea I was going to play golf 4 times a week, and but actually there's no way I could do that. And so but I do. It'd be nice. At the moment, I can only get out for 9 holes every 2 weeks. So if I can have a couple of rounds, but then I do want to do, but I don't want to lose that compounding effect. I think we're going to have really good growth continued in Perth and Brisbane. And so one of the ideas, we're thinking about. We're definitely not going to sell down, but there's a few ideas to maybe set up shop and do something similar. Look at building property strategies for other people, so they can actually chart that out and sort of look at kind of what they've got and how they can get to. Because the one thing that's quite big to call out is this was done in a job, in paper. It's not like I've started an uber successful business. I've just been able to do it just by growing my career, and it was always the thing. So like when I go to Michael, I've got all of this equity, and what do I need to do to be able to grow the portfolio? And he's basically saying, well, you just need to earn more, and so I've got to the point where can't earn any more unless I'm the bloody, go into the head off, and then basically that detracts from all of this sort of stuff that I really am interested in.
Yeah.
And so maybe if we can go out and do something similar to what Michael, Simon have done.
Yeah,
I'll work out what it's going to be.
You've got the journey, you've got the story. Like, I think one of the most important things for anyone starting out in this industry is to have done it yourself.
Yeah.
That means you're credible. That means the good, the bad, the ugly. You know how to go past a lot of the roadblocks that everyone will go through, and you can give real advice, I think, at the end of the day. So, Michael went down the broker path. I went down the buyer's agent's path. It'll be interesting to see which path you go down as well.
Well, no, will be for me as well.
Yeah.
It'll be and I think one of the things I do love about Australia, and we're just actually talking about it before we came on air, was in England you kind of like it's very sort of hierarchical, and you sort of like you follow a formula. You sort of go to school, you try and get good grades, and you try and get to the best university that you can. I didn't go to a very good university anyway, but I tried my best. Actually, I didn't, but I got through university, and I got a sports science degree. But then you're encouraged to then sort of get into a job, get into a career, and then become a manager, and then have your family, and then and that's your life basically. And whereas here you kind of like you're encouraged to give it a go, and even then those views are so ingrained in your psyche that it is scary to sort of step outside and do that. And that's kind of we're just talking about, it's going to be pretty exciting sort of handing the notice in, and it's not 100% ratified at the moment, but it's around February. But there was kind of like apprehension on my side because of all of those sort of informed views. So it's really exciting, but again, it's very scary. So I take my hat off to what you've managed to do.
I remember resigning. It was a pretty easy thing to do. Here's my notice.
Yeah.
I'll see you where do I see you? I guess see you later.
But you also had the backing of your portfolio had started to do some things for you. You're
Yeah.
obviously putting yourselves in positions where you can do, like, really, if you'd lost your job for whatever reason, you've still got that buffer. Like, that's
Yeah.
what people are doing it for as well. Like, it's to have that buffer and that security.
I think
So whatever
it's-
reason you're leaving a role for, it's...
Yeah, it's. I mean, in truthfulness, when I had the option to quit my job, working wasn't that bad anymore.
Yeah.
It's always like the grass is greener mentality.
Really
Grass
good
is
way to
greener.
put it. Like,
So up until that point, because up until that point, you're waking up in the morning, catching a train, going to work, like that mundane thing you do every day is necessity to get the paycheck and pay the bills and the rent or whatever. But when you get to a point where you don't actually need the pay slip per se or the money, you kind of think, oh, it's not too bad. Go to work at 9, get an hour for lunch, come home at 5, forget about everything, watch TV, all this and that. So
yeah.
it's not too bad. And I talk to a lot of people about what they want to do when they quit their jobs and when they get enough passive income to be able to quit their jobs. And a lot of them say, oh, I don't want to quit. I actually love what I do. But sometimes you're in situations in life where you can't work, whether it's physical or mental or some other situation that happens outside of your control.
Yeah.
And I think the whole idea of getting passive income or another income stream is just so that, those things, if and when they do happen, you're kind of not, in a really stressful place.
It's a security blanket.
It is, yeah, 100%. Yeah. And you can choose to work part-time. You can choose to work, if you love what you do, you can choose to start a business. I know people that work for charity and dedicate their lives to religion if they're really sort of religious. And obviously these avenues cannot, sometimes not pay very much.
Yeah.
So I think having that choice and that quote-unquote freedom is...
It's the freedom. That's what it is. That
absolutely.
sort of financial freedom and live life how you want to do it. And that's what this has given us. So we now can.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do those parts you're talking about.
But I will say there is a caveat, and that could be that if you're a very ambitious person,
Yeah.
you kind of just... Now you're in a path where there's so many opportunities and so many possibilities. You just get to a point where you just keep going and going and going in a good way. It's a good problem to have. But I work like 4 or 5 times harder than what I used to back when I was doing 9 to 5. But I suppose the difference is, you're obviously passionate and you love it.
But you love it, don't you?
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's one of the big things.
I mean, I'm 8-9 years deep now, into this house finder, and I can't really see myself stopping. And the only thing that I can attribute that to is the fact that I actually enjoy seeing people like yourself and everyone kind of just progress, and sooner or later they start telling me what I should be doing. So it's kind of like mentoring them, I guess you can call it. But that really kind of drives me to get stuck in every day.
Well, yeah, no, and it's motivating, and your story is motivating, and it helps us, and I hope sort of like me coming on and just showing it can be done, and it can be done in a job. Obviously, you've got to work at it, and it takes time, but it can be done. And I think I thank you, Simon, for all the help you've given.
No worries,
given
man.
us.
Thank you for coming on.
I think, I just want to say as well that you've shown it can be done, even if you don't necessarily take what would be deemed the most efficient
No.
route. It's had its twists and turns, and you've still ended up here.
Yeah.
And there's probably people that, are exasperated. They feel like they've done, tried so many different things that haven't worked or whatever, but you can keep cracking at it, and it will
It's a
work.
forgiving out,
Just-
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, every journey, you're going to go through good, the bad. You're gonna be unmotivated. You're gonna feel like giving up, and I think it's just about the mindset, and sometimes taking a breather is necessary. If something bad happens, or whatever is kind of holding you back, just pause. Do nothing, and then once the dust settles, you might have more clarity to be able to move forward again. So I think one of the things to take away from this story is that you've had plenty of that. Over the past, 10 odd years now.
Yeah.
But every time something's happened, you kind of just didn't, this isn't for me. You kind of go, okay, cool. What did I learn here? And then how can I apply that moving forward. And you're very proactive as well. Obviously, when something bad happens, you jump on the forums and read about different stories and, you know, how people may have overcome those things. So I think that also helps, you know, kind of that continuous education, you know, to get yourself to that point.
Yeah. The mindset thing is I mean, it's paramount to all of this, you know. It's the sexy thing is buying the property and seeing, you know, Rockingham bought for 470, and revalued at 570 you know, a few months later. But then it's the renovation you needed to do there. It's all the paperwork you got to do there. You're buying in trust, so there's a lot of paperwork with that. You know, having to get solicitors to do this and boilers blowing up and swim pools going down. Some problems with tenants in Loganley where. We won't go into that, but it's just quite incredible what happened, and trying to deal with it. And but you just have to keep that focus. And you say it's sort of like, okay, you know, this might cost me 10, 15 grand to fix this up, but you know, look at the bigger picture and where we're going. And it's just stepping up to the plate every day and swinging. And that's why these stories I think are so important. They're inspirational. I'm not saying I'm an inspiration, but certainly listening
I think it is.
I would say too.
I'm pretty inspired right now.
And I was just going to say as well, I bet you don't regret now that you've got that third property on in Loganley.
Monopoly, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't regret that extra 100K maybe that you overcapitalised on at the beginning there because it's all come full circle.
100%, yeah.
No. And pays off.
And it was a close friend who bought those back then when we thought it was going to go back, but no, don't think about that at all anymore. It's amazing how time changes and how money changes over these years, and sort of like, and now 410 in Loganley for a long time was we thought, especially with 230 you were paying, you're thinking, oh god, that's a lot of money. But now it's like, yeah, it's sort of I move in the market myself like at 690. So yeah, who'd have thought that corner in the Loganley market? Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your story with. I mean, Simon obviously knows this better than most, but for letting us rehash that on this, because really that's what Property Unfiltered is all about, getting that
absolutely
those raw stories, the twists and the turns, the things that you learn along the way, and hoping to impart those to other people out there who maybe spent even more than you did in Loganley. Who knows?
Yeah. But oh, yeah, no, that's great. And thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for coming on. And, you know, who knows, maybe in a few years, not maybe in just a few years, but in the future we'll get you on again and you'll be at another stratospheric level
another
or something.
10 mil.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look at
I might be going on your show.
Yeah, indeed.
You might be in Perth.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Queen's Rock. We'll buy houses side by side in Queen's Rock and we'll just go to the beach every day.
Yeah, we've got the hot tub there, so, you know, you could have the hot tub podcast or something. Yeah, it sounds good. Got a few ideas.
Absolutely living the dream. Simon, Stephen, thank you so much. This was Property Unfiltered. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, and we will pass those along. We can chat about them in upcoming episodes as well. And if you like this episode, make sure you review us on whatever platform that you do listen to your podcasts on. Until next time, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.